Heracles catches a 3,000-pound killer boar without punching it, which might sound impressive until you realize that punching things has solved almost every problem in his life so far. Monster, punch it. Bad guy, punch it. Locked door, probably punching it. Today, he's about to learn that sometimes the strongest thing that you can do is step out of the way, because every problem has momentum. And maybe it's an angry customer. Maybe it's your toddler having a complete emotional collapse because you peeled their banana instead of letting them peel it. Maybe it's your dog sprinting through the house carrying an entire rotisserie chicken that absolutely does not belong to him. And if you've ever owned a dog, you know exactly how this ends. No regrets. He has no shame. He believes with every fiber of his being that that chicken was a gift from God. And if you chase him, congratulations, you just turn one bad decision into cardio, because some problems feed off of your reaction. The more you panic, the faster they move. The harder you push, the harder they push back. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stop chasing long enough for that problem to run straight into its own consequences. The ancient Greeks understood that. So naturally, they turned that lesson into a giant murder pig.
Myths and mayhem, say my name. Myths and mayhem, stoke the flame. From Troy to the sea, they're still chasing me. Myths and mayhem, take the stage. Myths and mayhem, turn the page. Gods, new scars, still lighting up the stars.
Welcome back to Myths and Mayhem, the show where gods create problems, kings make them worse, and heroes are slowly discovering that solving every problem with brute force is basically emotional duct tape. Last time, Heracles spent an entire year chasing a deer, not because he wasn't strong enough, but because strength wasn't the right tool. For the first time in his life, patience won, and that matters. Because today's labor looks exactly the opposite. Huge monster, sharp tusks, property damage on an industrial scale. Exactly the kind of problem that old Heracles would have solved by introducing it to the business end of a club. Only now, he ain't the same Heracles anymore. He's changing, slowly, painfully, usually by making one terrible decision and spending the next labor learning why it was a terrible decision. Which, if we're being honest, is also how most people become adults. The difference is, most of us don't have to learn our life lessons while fighting monsters. Heracles, he does. Today, his next lesson has 4 legs, 2 enormous tusks, and absolutely no interest in personal growth. Now, back in Mycenae, King Eurystheus, he had a problem. Heracles kept surviving. And this was becoming inconvenient. Every labor was supposed to get rid of him. Instead, he kept coming back stronger. The lion, dead. The hydra, dead. The golden hind was returned alive, which somehow was even more annoying, because now Heracles wasn't just winning, he was learning. And nothing terrifies a bad boss quite like a competent employee who keeps improving. Deep inside the executive jar, Eurystheus had unfolded the next assignment. A servant approached carefully. "My king,
Yes,
the hero has returned.
I know.
He says that he is ready for the next labor."
Does he sound confident?
"A little.
That's upsetting.
What would you like him to do?"
There is a boar.
"A boar, my king?"
Oh, don't undersell it. This isn't a pig. It's an agricultural emergency.
The royal advisor stepped forward carrying a map. The king pointed toward Mount Erymanthos. Cold, steep, covered in thick forests and deep snow. Beautiful, if you ignored the enormous creature currently treating the entire mountain like its own personal wrecking yard. The boar uprooted trees, destroyed farms, scattered shepherds. It charged through fields, tore apart fences, and left entire villages wondering whether rebuilding was worth the effort. This wasn't livestock. This was an ecological opinion with tusks, 3,000 pounds of muscle, attitude, and unresolved anger, built like someone had crossed a bulldozer with a very personal grudge. And the assignment, it was simple. Go to Mount Erymanthos, catch the boar, bring it back alive. Did you just say bring it back alive? Yes. Actually, that's usually how alive works. No accidental injuries? No. What about emotional injuries? Okay, you can emotionally injure the boar. Excellent.
And bring it back to the palace.
Heracles looked toward the executive jar. You want me to bring a giant, angry pig here?
Well, maybe close enough for us to verify.
That sounds reasonable. You think that is reasonable? I've been told worse. Heracles left Mycenae before sunrise. The Nemean lion skin rested across his shoulders. His club hung at his side. His bow and the remaining Hydra arrows rode across his back. He had started these labors looking like a walking weapon. Now he looked like a walking museum exhibit. Every victory was becoming part of his equipment. The lion was no longer just a trophy, it protected him. The Hydra wasn't just a monster that he had defeated, its venom had become a part of his arsenal. The golden hind had taught him something even harder to carry: patience. Without realizing it, Heracles had started carrying his previous lessons with him. He just didn't know that the next lesson was going to arrive wearing fur and trying to kill him. Now, the climb into the mountain took several days. The air grew colder, the forest grew thicker, the roads grew narrower. Eventually, the roads disappeared altogether. Only game trails remained. Late one afternoon, he saw smoke curling above the trees. Heracles followed it until he reached a cave. Outside, a centaur was splitting firewood. Now, Greek mythology gives us two different kinds of centaurs. The first kind are wise, thoughtful teachers, the sort of people that you'd actually invite over for dinner. The second were basically fraternity brothers who happened to weigh 1,200 pounds. Pholus belonged to the first category. He looked up, recognized Heracles immediately, and smiled. My friend, Pholus. Centaur walked over and wrapped Heracles in a hug that would probably have qualified as a chiropractic adjustment. What brings you to my mountain? I'm here for the boar. Oh, I'm sorry. I've been hearing that a lot lately too. Come, tomorrow you hunt. Tonight we eat. Dinner was simple: roasted meat, fresh bread, wild herbs, cold spring water, the kind of meal that tastes incredible after several days of climbing mountains. They talked for hours, not about monsters, not about the labors, just about life. Old friends catching up. Pholus asked about the lion. Heracles admitted that strangling it wasn't originally plan A. Pholus nearly choked laughing. I would have paid good money to watch that. So would have Athena. So would have Ares. So would have the lion, if it had survived. For a while, the labors disappeared. Heracles wasn't Greece's greatest hero. He wasn't a demigod. He wasn't a walking disaster with a club. He was just a tired traveler, sharing a meal with an old friend. And then he looked toward the back of the cave. A massive clay jar was resting against the wall. So, what do you have to drink? Well, I have wine. Perfect. But there's a catch. There always is. It isn't mine. Oh, what do you mean? It belongs to all of the centaurs. One jar? Yes, shared by everyone. Opened only when we're all together. That's a lot of wine. Yes, it is. So, 1 cup? I don't know. What could possibly go wrong? History, once again, started taking notes. You know, I've had that exact conversation in my head before, and it never ended well. How bad could it really be? Now, if you've spent any time listening to this channel, you already know those words are the last famous words before an evening completely falls apart. One cup. Heracles broke the seal. The moment the jar was opened, the cave filled with the richest scent of wine. And not your ordinary wine. Dionysus's wine. The wine of the person who became a god. This was the wine reserved for the centaurs, and its smell didn't stay in the cave. It escaped down the mountain, carried by the evening breeze the way bad news travels through a family group chat. Instantly, to everyone, with commentary, miles away, one centaur stopped walking.
Did you smell that?
Our wine!
Someone open the jar!
Every head turned to the mountain.
Oh no, somebody made a mistake.
Back inside, Heracles raised the cup.
To friendship.
Two surviving mountains. They drank. Outside, branches snapped. Hooves pounded across the frozen ground. Pholus slowly lowered his cup. Do you hear that?
Sounds like
Crash! The first centaur burst through the trees, then another. Within seconds, the peaceful dinner had become an angry crowd surrounding the cave. One pointed at the open jar.
You opened it!
Without us? A third skipped the conversation entirely and threw a rock. Greek conflict resolution was not particularly sophisticated. Heracles stepped in front of Pholus.
Easy. We can explain.
One of the centaurs answered by throwing an entire tree branch. Or apparently not. The fight exploded. Clubs, spears, flying rocks. One centaur tried to kick Heracles square in the chest. That was ambitious, to say the least. It lasted all of about a half of a second. Heracles caught the leg and lifted the centaur off of the ground and sent him tumbling down into a pile of snow. Another one charged. Heracles ducked. The centaur accidentally tackled his own cousin. For creatures that were supposedly half horse, their group project skills were terrible. Everyone was yelling. Nobody was listening. Heracles tried to hold them back. He shoved one away, knocked another one into a tree. A third one came charging toward him, carrying what appeared to be an entire log. Heracles looked at it, then looked at the centaur.
Really?
The centaur swung. Heracles blocked it. The log shattered.
Okay.
There was simply too many. Heracles reached over his shoulder. His hand closed around one of the Hydra arrows. He hesitated, but only for a moment. He then drew it. Now remember, these were not ordinary arrows. Back in the swamp, Heracles had dipped every arrowhead into the Hydra venom, which meant one scratch could kill. He fired. The centaurs scattered. He fired another arrow. More fled. He fired another one. Even more fled. The fight changed immediately. Nobody wanted any part of those arrows. Some of the centaurs ran back into the forest. Others suddenly remembered very important appointments somewhere on the opposite side of the mountain. They wanted to be as far away from those hydra-poisoned arrows as physically possible. The mountain slowly became silent. Smoke drifted through the clearing. Broken branches covered the ground. Heracles lowered his bow.
I think we're done.
He then heard something behind him. A sharp breath. He turned. Pholus stood completely still, looking down. One of the poisoned arrows had struck him. Heracles' heart dropped. No! No! His hands reached for the arrow and stopped. The Hydra venom, he already knew it. There was no cure. Pholus looked up, almost apologetically. I suppose what one cup was enough. Heracles refused to accept it. He tore strips from his cloak, pressed the wound, gathered herbs, fetched water, anything, everything, nothing mattered. The poison did exactly what it always did. It never stopped. And for the first time since the labors began, Heracles wasn't fighting. He wasn't planning. He wasn't looking for something to hit. He simply knelt beside his friend, watching the consequences of one bad decision unfold in front of him. The mountain grew quiet. Not the peaceful quiet from dinner, the heavy kind. The kind that arrives after laughter disappears. Heracles had come to Mount Erymanthos to catch a monster. Instead, one careless decision had cost him someone who welcomed him into his home. He buried Pholus beneath the stand of trees overlooking the valley. He stood there for a long moment, then he picked up his bow. He looked at the poisoned arrows, and for the first time, they had felt heavier than the lion skin across his shoulders. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stared at the fire, thinking about the moment that he had opened the jar. 1 cup. What could possibly go wrong? He had said. And he had believed it. And now he understood something that he didn't before. Sometimes the danger isn't the thing you're fighting. Sometimes it's the decision you make before the fighting even begins. The next morning, Heracles climbed alone. No conversation, no laughter, only the sound of snow crunching beneath his sandals. The higher he climbed, the quieter the mountain became. No birds, no shepherds. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stay. Then he found the tracks. Each hoofprint was almost the size of a dinner plate, fresh and deep. Broken trees lay scattered across the mountainside. Some had been uprooted. Others had simply snapped in half. One boulder, the size of a wagon, sat halfway down the slope. It hadn't rolled there. Somebody had shoved it. The locals, they hadn't exaggerated at all. This thing was the biggest problem on the mountain. Eventually, Heracles saw it, standing on the ridge above him. Steam rising from its nostrils, tusks curved like ivory swords, its shoulders nearly as tall as Heracles himself, built like an avalanche that had learned how to hold a grudge. This boar looked down. Heracles looked back. Old habits, they die hard. He charged 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, chest deep into the snow. Complete stop. Heracles blinked. Right. The boar stared at Heracles, looked at the snow, and then back at Heracles. Then gave a disappointed snort. The exact face a teacher makes when somebody asks if homework is optional. The boar turned around and wandered away. Not frightened, not impressed, just disappointed. Heracles pulled himself free and started after it. And then he stopped. Yesterday, he had acted first, and because of that, his friend had paid the price. So he stood still, watching, listening. The mountain wasn't just covered in snow. It was shaped by the snow. Deep ravines, hidden drifts, narrow passes, places where a careless step ended in massive consequences. Heracles looked at the slope, and then at the boar, and then at the snow. The terrain wasn't getting in his way. It was showing him something. He didn't need to beat the mountain. He needed to use it. And for the 4th labor in a row, Heracles stopped trying to overpower the problem and started trying to understand it. And then he smiled. Heracles, he had stopped. He looked. And now he picked up his club, not to fight, but to make noise. Clang! The sound echoed through the valley. The boar's head snapped up. Clang! Another strike. A challenge. The boar lowered his head. Perfect. 3,000 pounds of terrible decisions started charging downhill. The earth shook. The snow sprayed in the air. Heracles didn't move. Not yet. Closer, closer, closer. 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps away. The boar was almost to him, and then Heracles stepped aside. The boar, he didn't. It plunged deep into the snowdrift. The mountain swallowed it almost whole. It plunged so deep into the snowdrift that the mountain swallowed it almost whole. The snow exploded into the sky. When everything settled, the boar was buried nearly to its shoulders. Its legs kicked wildly. Its tusks carved trenches through the snow. It couldn't get traction. The harder it fought, the deeper it sank. Heracles climbed carefully into the drift. He wrapped heavy ropes around its legs. The boar fought. Heracles waited. It fought harder. Heracles waited longer. Eventually, the animal exhausted itself, and Heracles realized something. He could have spent hours wrestling with it. He could have tried to overpower it. He could have turned the mountain into a battlefield. Instead, he had let the mountain do the work. Not defeated by strength, defeated by momentum. The mountain had done more than half the work. Heracles had finally learned how to let it. He rested his hand on the boar's shoulder.
I know. It's been a rough week for me too.
The boar snorted.
I'll take that as a sign of agreement.
For once, Heracles didn't need to be the strongest thing on the mountain. He just needed to be smart enough to know when the mountain was stronger. Now, 3 days later, Heracles walked back into Mycenae, dragging one extremely irritated bull behind him. The palace guards looked up. Nobody screamed anymore. Experience had changed them. One guard sighed. Paperwork. I'll get the threat assessment. Since the Hydra, the palace had implemented new safety procedures. Any labor involving a creature over 100 pounds required a written threat assessment. And it had to be read aloud through the king's air hole before delivery could be acknowledged. Threat level. Extreme. Tusk count. 2. Disposition. Professionally hostile. Mood. Unresolved.
Skip to the bottom.
Recommendation. The king should stay inside of the jar indefinitely.
Noted. Labor complete. File it. Remove the pig. I've seen enough for today.
Somewhere inside the jar, one lock clicked, and then another. And then, for reasons nobody could really explain, a third. Heracles just smiled, untied the ropes, and escorted the boar back into the wilderness. And for the fourth labor in a row, he left Mycenae without needing to carry the king into the infirmary, which is progress. 4 labors in, and there's a pattern. If you step back far enough, the lion taught Heracles courage. The Hydra taught him that force can make the problem worse. The golden hind taught him patience. The Erymanthos boar taught him restraint. But the boar also gave him another lesson, one that Pholus had already paid for. Some consequences don't come with a warning label. Pholus didn't die because Heracles was weak. He died because Heracles made a decision without thinking through what it might cost. And sometimes life works just like that. One careless word, one impulsive choice, one angry reaction, and suddenly you're dealing with the consequences that you never meant to create. Heracles couldn't undo what happened to Pholus. He couldn't go back, but he could decide what he would do next. And that's exactly what happened on the mountain. When he saw the boar, his first instinct was to charge, and that's exactly what he did. But then he stopped. He watched. He thought. He then looked at the mountain, and then he realized the thing that was standing in the way might actually be the thing that could help him. Sometimes we exhaust ourselves trying to move mountains, when the mountain is actually trying to help us. Sometimes the thing that's slowing you down is also the thing slowing down the thing that's chasing you. Every problem has momentum. The mistake is believing that you've always got to stop it yourself. Sometimes you just have to stop and figure out where to stand, because strength is knowing what you can do. Wisdom is knowing when to use it. And sometimes knowing when not to use it is the stronger choice. And maybe that's what these labors have been about all along. Not defeating monsters, becoming a hero. The lion gave Heracles courage. The Hydra gave him strategy. The golden hind gave him patience. The Erymanthos boar gave him restraint. 4 labors, 4 tools, and every time Heracles learns something, he becomes less like the man who began this journey and more like the hero that Greece would eventually remember for millennia. But there is still 8 labors remaining, and something tells me he's going to need every tool in that toolbox. In conclusion, that's how Heracles caught a 3,000-pound boar without winning a single wrestling match. He let winter do half of the work and the mountain do the rest. And for the 4th labor in a row, King Eurystheus has learned that sending Heracles away to die is becoming a deeply ineffective management strategy. Ultimately, for Eurystheus, he still has 8 more opportunities to be disappointed. Next time, our favorite king decides that if monsters aren't working, maybe sanitation will. Heracles is headed toward the stables of Aegeus. 30 years, thousands of cattle, enough manure to qualify as its own weather system, and he's about to discover that sometimes the smartest solution is to borrow an entire river. Until then, stay curious, stay legendary, and remember, not every problem is asking you to push harder. Sometimes it's asking you to step aside and let momentum do the work. See you next time. And if you're enjoying Myths and Mayhem, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.